Hello, my name is Lindsay, and this is a training video for RBTs, and we are going to learn about prompting and prompting hierarchies. So what is a prompt? A prompt is additional stimuli that assist the learner in evoking the correct response. So an easier way to think about that is it's a hint. It's a hint at the correct response we want the learner to make. So there are many different types of prompts that can be used. You can see them sort of scattered across the screen here. Um, and the most common ones that you will see being used are going to be verbal, gestural, model prompting, and physical prompting. So all these prompts are not appropriate for teaching any skill to any learner. Um, as practitioners, we should be considering matching the prompt type with the skill that's being taught. So, for example, if we're trying to teach a learner how to respond to, "What's that?" then a verbal or an echoic prompt might be the most helpful, as the answer they're giving is going to be verbal as well. So, let's say it's an apple. You say, "What's that?" "Apple." And then the learner can echo the word apple to make that correct response. However, if we are teaching a learner how to follow a schedule, then a gestural or a pictorial prompt might be more helpful. So we might pair that written schedule with visuals and pictures, or we might use a gesture prompt to point to what they're going to do next on their schedule. So I've taken some of these prompts and I've divided them into the two basic categories of prompts. And this is a stimulus prompt and a response prompt. And again, all these different types of prompts, this is not all the prompts that exist, but these are just many examples that you will see. So a stimulus prompt manipulates the actual stimuli to encourage a correct response. So for example, a positional prompt. Let's say we want the learner to touch a picture of an apple. And we have an array of 3 different picture cards in front of them. If we use a positional prompt, we are going to move the picture of the apple a little bit closer to them. We're going to position it closer to the learner so they are more likely to touch the picture of the apple. Another example of a stimulus prompt in this case might be making the actual picture card of the apple bigger than the other picture cards, so it stands out more. But either way, we are actually manipulating the stimuli itself. A response prompt operates directly on the response itself. So in this same example, we might pick up the learner's hand and place it on top of the picture of the apple. So they're seeing exactly what type of response they're supposed to make. They're supposed to put their hand on top of the apple. So that's a response prompt. So prompts don't just look different, and some prompts are more intrusive than others, or they provide greater levels of assistance, basically. So this visual shows generally where certain prompts fall on this scale of intrusivity. Some are clearly more intrusive, such as hand-over-hand full physical prompting. Others can vary depending on the type of skill and the learner. So when teaching a learner a skill, we will use a prompt hierarchy. This usually is 3 to 4 prompts arranged based on how intrusive they are. So if you start by giving the least intrusive prompt and continue to give greater assistance as necessary, this is a least to most prompting hierarchy. If you're starting at the most intrusive prompt and ensuring they're making the correct response, and then reducing the levels of assistance as they start to get it, then you're using a most to least prompt hierarchy. You might notice that a lot more intrusive prompts are response prompts, and stimulus prompts generally provide less assistance. This is because response prompt is literally inserting yourself into the response the learner is making. Okay, so we're going to look at some examples of a prompt hierarchy. Our example skill is washing hands. So this one is a least to most prompt hierarchy. When we use least to most prompting, we always give the learner a chance to make an independent response first. So that's the top of the hierarchy here. But if they end up not being able to do that, then we move on to prompt level 1. In this case, that's a gestural prompt. So that might be pointing at the bottle of soap. If they still aren't able to do this, then we move on to the next prompt level. And that might be a model. We demonstrate how to get soap, and then we give them a chance to do it. If we still need more help, we move on to partial physical. So that could be guide the hands to the position they need to get the soap, and then let go and see if they can do it from there. So you're only partially physically guiding them, but not doing the whole thing. However, if still more help is needed after that, then you go on to the last prompt level, the controlling prompt, which is full physical hand-over-hand prompting and helping them get that soap. And again, the controlling prompt is the one that ensures that they are making the correct response. And so that always comes last. So with least to most prompting, this usually all happens within one teaching trial, and usually within a matter of seconds or minutes. And it's often paired with a time delay. So let's look at the time delay. Time delay means a specified amount of time will be waited before moving on to the next prompt level. So this helps to encourage least restrictive teaching and independence. And it's very important for avoiding prompt dependence. So as you can see in our example, we allow 5 seconds for an independent response, but if it doesn't happen within 5 seconds, that's when we move on to the gestural prompt. And we continue to do this between each prompt level until we get to that most intrusive physical hand over hand. Okay, so now we're going to look at washing hands, but using most to least prompting. So unlike least to most to least prompting usually occurs over many trials or sessions. For example, some learners may need partial physical guidance to wash their hands for months before moving on to the lesser prompt level. So I'm going to just give you guys some examples of how a most to least system might be used. So for example, sometimes the controlling prompt is used for the first 3 trials in a day. And then on the 4th trial, you might fade to the next less intrusive prompt. However, if an error is made, then you would go back and do 3 more trials. Another example could be using that controlling prompt for the first week of teaching a new skill. And then the next week, you attempt to fade it out. And again, if an error is made, then you go back and you teach the most intrusive prompt again. So these are examples of errorless teaching. It's when you use that controlling prompt to ensure no mistakes are made. But this is always systematically faded into a less restrictive prompting. And again, this is to avoid that dependence on the prompts. So as an RBT, it's not your job to have to figure out what prompting hierarchies to use and how to use them. Your BCBA will specify the systematic way that you will use these hierarchies and what the time delay should be and how you're going to fade into lesser prompts. And it's going to depend on that specific learner and the skill that you're teaching. So if you ever aren't sure of the details when you're running a certain program, don't be afraid to ask your BCBA for some supervision on the prompting procedures they would like you to use. And here are references supporting their information in this video. Thank you.